Hello, today is Tuesday, April 19th, 2022. My name is Matthew Gallegos. I am interviewing Oscar Diaz for the South Texas Archives of Texas A&M University-Kingsville. This is part of the Voces of Pandemic Oral History Project in partnership with the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin. Please know, Mr. Oscar Diaz, that this recorded interview will be placed in the South Texas Archives at Texas A&M University-Kingsville and shared with the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin. If there is anything you do not wish to answer or talk about, especially given that your recording may appear online, I will honor your wishes. Also, if there is something you want to talk about, please bring it up and we'll talk about it. Because we are not conducting this interview in person, I need to record you consenting. So I'll ask you a series of 6 questions. Please say, yes, I agree, or no, I do not agree after each one. There are 4 questions we need to make sure you agree to before we go on. South Texas Archives at Texas A&M University-Kingsville wishes to archive your interview along with any other photographs and or documentation at the South Texas Archives at Texas A&M University-Kingsville. We will retain copyright of the interview and any other materials you donate to the South Texas Archives at Texas A&M University-Kingsville. Question 1, do you give us consent to archive your interview and your materials at the Jernigan Library at Texas A&M University-Kingsville?
Yes, sir.
Question 2, do you grant South Texas Archives at the Jernigan Library at Texas A&M University-Kingsville copyright over the interview and any material you provide?
Yes.
Question 3, do you agree to allow South Texas Archives at the Jernigan Library at Texas A&M University-Kingsville to post this interview on the internet where it may be viewed by people around the world?
Yes.
Question 4, do you grant South Texas Archives at the Jernigan Library at Texas A&M University-Kingsville consent to share your interview and your materials with the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin for inclusion in the Voces of a Pandemic Oral History Project, which will include posting the interview on the internet?
Yeah.
We have many questions in the pre-interview form that we have already filled out. We use that information from the pre-interview form to help in research. The entire form is kept in a secure Voces center at the University of Texas at Austin. The final storing of the pre-interview form will be at the South Texas Archives at the Jernigan Library at Texas A&M University-Kingsville. We will have stripped out any contact information for yourself or family members so that you will not be part of your public file. Your public file will only be accessible at the Jernigan Library. Question 5. Do you wish for us to share the rest of your interview in your public file available to researchers at the South Texas Archives at the Jernigan Library at Texas A&M University-Kingsville?
Yes.
On question 6, on occasion, Voces receives requests from journalists who wish to contact our interview subjects. We only deal with legitimate news outlets. Do you give consent for us to share your phone numbers or your email with journalists?
That one, no.
Okay. So I am going to go and start this interview. And if you have any questions or you feel like you need to ask me something, by all means, please go ahead. So I want to talk a bit about this pandemic. So can you tell me a bit how you learned about COVID-19?
Well, just basically from at the very beginning, from various news outlets and of course the internet and the stuff, the items that were given to us via email from the university. And then also I have many friends in the medical field, in the science field that I've spoken to about what was going on and, kind of weed out the non-factual information, more about opinionated things. I wanted to know some facts, and the people that I spoke to are very trustworthy. They're family members. They wouldn't lie to me and they're very high up in their field. That's basically how of course I've kept up with things and, either reading various articles or, like I said, just keep up to date with people, asking the people that my contacts that know from the science of what was going on with the actual virus and what's going on with the pandemic. So that's how I got most of my information.
So what was your initial reaction to the information about COVID-19?
Well, the first thing was, oh crap. That was the first thing. And 2 was like, okay, now what are we going to do? Because there's a lot of things. It was one of those wow factor. The unknown was the most I guess, the scariest thing at the beginning, however you want to look at it, because it was something different. It was something that no one had encountered. So to me, that was the biggest thing. It was the unknown factor of what was going on and what was going to be handled. It's one thing when you're by yourself, and when you have, a family, a wife, and two kids, it affects them deeply when it goes to school, their learning, their safety. And so that was my main concern, was that, I'm not one to panic early on until I know facts. And I typically am pretty relaxed about things and calm, and that's basically how that went down. Just my reaction, and trying to, kind of get the family together and have them not worry too much, because my sons were actually very worried about it because they didn't know. They're younger, 11 and 14, well, 11 and 15 now, but I guess when it happened, they were 9 and maybe 13, depending on their birthdays. Been about a year and a half, 2 years, right?
Mm.
Roughly. So I guess they were about a year. But anyway, so they were younger. They didn't quite know. And so I had to keep them calm from things. So,
So around what point do you think did you realize it was serious? 'Cause you're saying that around the beginning you're trying not to panic, but about how far into hearing about what was going on did you feel like, oh wow, this is actually really happening to us?
when I started hearing of, it's weird. Whenever you can see or hear about other happening to other people, but it doesn't really hit you until it hits you a little bit closer. People that you do know, or that were affected, either that had gotten really sick or that had passed away. I had one of my oldest son ended up getting COVID, but luckily he just had a little fever and that was it. But we didn't know how it was going to affect us at the time, and affect my parents that are older. And I have, you know, I had my grandmother. She recently passed away, non-COVID related. But then I have a grandmother right now that's 97 years old. So we didn't understand. We didn't quite. I mean, not quite understand, but we didn't want to put anybody at risk, because it wasn't about us getting sick. We're pretty healthy, but we didn't know. We don't, it's like that unknown thing. But we didn't want to be at fault for getting anyone else sick in our family or anywhere close. But it kind of hits you when you think about it happening to either your own family, immediate family, or personal friends. Because I've had, one of my best friends, his wife, she had a mother, or she had her sister, and her son had passed away. So it was, I went to the funeral, and it was very sad. I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen what a COVID funeral looks like, but the bodies are covered in a bubble, because they still could have it. So I mean, it was a mother and their son. So you know that's when you're like, okay, this is real. Because I've never been to a funeral where someone died of the flu, which I know people do all the time. So when you see it firsthand, that's when it hits you, right? And so
So we're talking a bit about how it's affected your personal life so far. So I want to just kind of get it delve a bit further into that, into like how COVID-19 has affected your personal life. So your children, your family members. I know you spoke about it a little bit, but maybe if there's anything you'd like to go into a bit more detail on those.
well, I like to think of everything in a positive way, kind of glass half full kind of person, and yeah, there were a lot of bad things, but there were also some good things that came about it. You know, for me, I was always gone, either gigging, doing all these other things. And now I mean, I literally spent a whole year at home almost, with my family, not having to worry about things, spend a lot of time with my kids, spend a lot of time with the family, wife, my parents. We would get tested regularly if we ever went anywhere, just to make sure my parents were okay. Um, and silver lining, I learned how to do a lot of things. I learned how to teach online, which was weird. I learned how to, started reading things on how to do other types of, uh, I don't know, just things that we never get to do because we never get to slow down. The way I saw COVID, it's almost like the powers that be gave the world a big timeout. You know, like, hey, calm down. That's kind of the way I looked at it, and I tried to see it that way. You know, I mean, yeah, there were some bad things, and there were some good things, but the bad thing was, when I'm teaching, we had to we didn't stop everything. We just paused and slowed down. You know, I missed hanging out with people. I miss hanging out with students. I miss interacting with students face to face and talking to them, and just those types of things I really, really missed. That was a big thing. Like I said, still worried about being safe and all that kind of stuff too, because we did stay put for a long time. And every once in a while, I would go out and I'd be the one to go get food or do this and do that. So yes, it was bad, but there's a silver lining for everything. I mean, it's kind of the projects that we did, in the studio. I know the octet, we did trombone octet. We did something that Song for Hope, or not Song for Hope. It was I forgot what that song was that Stephen Verhulst wrote. I learned how to we put things together, put a trombone octet together, and sent it out into the internet, and we got a nice story in the Color Times about it. And it was, I mean, it was, there was just something nice that we could do together without being together, you know. And also, this is the big thing. I think what it taught us not to take things for granted at the time. That's for me was the biggest thing. Don't take it for granted. Just the small time you have with your friends, or you know, that was a big thing for me. So
I definitely want to start jumping back to what you said about talking about the studio, but there's one really quick question I want to ask about, kind of jumping back to something else you said about going out and you kind of being the one that would go out to the store and get stuff like that. How long did it take for y'all to start feeling a bit more comfortable going out? And what was it like when you went out? What did you feel or what did you see as well?
it, my wife did too. We took some turns, but we were kind of worried about the kids because they couldn't get vaccinated at the time, so we wanted them to stay put. You we weren't sure exactly. Like I said, there's still that unknown factor. That was the thing. It's the unknown factor of not going on or what's going on. And so I mean, we didn't go out to eat for a long time, a long time, because one of the things we like to do as a family is go out to eat. We love to go out to eat. We love to do that kind of thing. But we didn't do it. The first time we did, it man, it was a while. It was at least 9 months into it or more. And when we did, we sat outside. It was that kind of thing, you know. Um, but we always had our mask on whenever we went anywhere. Now not so much. No, not so much. Only when I was traveling and flying in the airplanes, which I think today they just lifted that ban for the airplanes. I think they just lifted the mask ban for planes and stuff. So, but I still wore it because I wore it there. I did what I was supposed to do because once again, I did not want to be the cause of being a carrier. I just did not want to. I didn't want to have that. Uh, but it was different. I mean, let me tell you, everybody with masks at HEB. Well, not everyone. I'm not going to say everybody, but it was when it was mandated. But then after that, 50-50 or something like that. But I always wore it. My youngest one still kind of wears it just because I think he's not afraid of it, but I think he just because he's been vaccinated, but he doesn't have. I don't think he has a second dose yet. I'm not exactly sure. I can't remember, or maybe the third dose. He has the second one, maybe not the third. I don't remember, but he still kind of wears it. He wears it at school mainly, But my oldest one, he wears it sometimes too. It just depends. I think it became this comfort thing for them, like it made them feel comfortable. And I know some people are like, "Masks don't work, mask." That's a whole nother dilemma, But you know, we did as what we're told, just because what if we did that? What if we gave it to somebody? You know, I didn't want to deal with the what ifs. So that's kind of how we dealt with things.
Kind of jumping onto that mask. So I know you're saying how some of your family members still wear masks. what were your thoughts in general about masks, maybe from the beginning, and how you think about them now, and how you think about some people that, and whether you think the masks have worked, whether they haven't, or anything between?
Well, this goes back to knowing people in the science field, knowing people in the and this is always going to get backlash. Everyone's always not going to agree with you, even if the science is there, And I'm not a doctor. I mean, I'm not a medical doctor, and I'm not a science doctor. I'm not any type of scientific doctor, anything like that. I don't have a PhD. It's a DMA, completely different, But I believe they do help. They do help. It's depending on the mask, you know, depending. I mean, when you go to the hospitals and when you go, why do doctors wear them? They don't have to wear masks. I mean, maybe they do, but you know, they wear them for a reason. And I think they help temporarily. Are they 100%? No, nothing's 100%, but I think they do help. Like I said, depending on the mask, you know, and that's how I see it. I think they did help. I think they do help. Uh, People wore masks even before COVID. I mean, I had one of my old teachers. She had cancer, right, and she's very susceptible to getting sick. She wore a mask to symphony rehearsal. When it was flu season, she wore a mask. I mean, so masks have been around way before COVID. I know people that don't believe it and they think it's BS. You can't make me wear this, blah, blah, blah. This is America. I'm like, well, I mean, I guess, but, just they have a right to do whatever they want. If somebody enters the store and they say you need to wear a mask, well, you got to abide by them. It's their store. They can kind of do whatever they want. I'm not a lawyer or know anything about the law, but if you own that place, you can tell them we reserve the right to serve you if you don't have a mask on. Some people do, some people don't, but I think it did help. I think the right kind of masks do help. That's how I feel.
So earlier you mentioned that your son was vaccinated. Are you vaccinated?
I am.
What about the rest of your family? Are they vaccinated?
Well, I know my immediate family are all vaccinated. Yes.
So when you first got your vaccination, what was it like? Were you weary of it? Did you have any reason why or why not you weren't?
Well, I go back to history things, like I remember my parents. If I don't know if your parents have this kind of scar here. It's on their arm, about right here. It's about a circle, and it has little pinpoints. I don't know if your parents are old enough to have that, but my parents have that. It's like I don't forgot. It might have been a smallpox vaccine. I don't know exactly what it was, but it's a vaccine, And I mean, it was a big hole, man. And I was thinking, I mean, they took a vaccine so that we didn't have to get smallpox. That kind of thing, And I think about history, about that kind of stuff, about in the past, what did people do to I mean, there was a lot of diseases and viruses before COVID, And so, my parents did that and a lot of other people did that. And so for me, I was like, I'm going to trust the doctors. I mean, I want to trust the doctors. That's why they're here. You know, if we can't trust the doctors, from the government, then man, we got problems. Nothing happened with me right now with the vaccine. I mean, I've had two vaccines plus the booster. The only thing that knocked me out was a booster. That was it. I mean, that's just a little side effect, but nothing else has happened to me. I don't feel bad. It's been a while since I've had the vaccine. None of my family members got messed up by it. I mean, they say you don't know until later. Like, well, I'd rather, if it was, if I were to get it and something really bad were to happen and that vaccine would have helped me, it's kind of like I'd rather die later than now. kind of mentality. You know, that's how I see it. Some people got really, 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 really sick and close to death. You know, and I had some friends that were like that, got super sick for a long time, almost like really close, and then they pulled out of it. You know, which is great, but they still have this underlying effects that bother them right now from that, from COVID. You know, so
Can I ask which vaccines you've taken or
I
your family has
go.
taken?
Oh shoot, I don't remember. Hold on, it's either Moderna, Johnson, or what was the other one?
Pfizer?
Pfizer. I think. Oh, Pfizer. We got the Pfizer. I believe we got the Pfizer.
So you said you got your booster with it, right? And
Hmm.
there are some talks of a fourth shot coming up for new variants. Would you be okay with getting that fourth shot?
I don't know yet because of all the things I've been reading about the variants. It doesn't seem like it's that big a deal. You know. Uh, so I don't know. I mean, if I don't need to get it, not need it, but if I don't see a need for it, then I may not. It's not that I'm afraid of, this. I mean, I don't know. I know there's those variants, but what I've been hearing is that they're maybe a little weaker. If I'm, I could be wrong, but they seem like they're a little bit weaker, and they keep getting weaker. So I mean, if I don't need to put anything else in my body, I won't. So
Okay.
I don't know.
So talking about the medical field and all this, I want to talk a bit about healthcare and the concerns with healthcare that have emerged because of COVID. How has COVID affected the way you've been getting your healthcare, maybe with yourself, your children, or your family in general? How has COVID affected that happening for you?
Well, the only thing that we do differently is if any one of us is sick, we immediately take a COVID test just because we don't want to spread a lot of things. Because another thing too, I mean, I'd like to think that COVID is a lot weaker now, but there's still rules implemented that, you know, if I were to get COVID and I gave it to somebody at the school, we would be out for a while. We'd have to be out for a while. And that's either a lot of work missed or a lot of school missed, even if we're not that sick, but there's still those protocols that are in place that are still really, they're out there for safety purposes, that what if factor. But that's basically it. I mean, we'd take them to the doctor, if especially the boys. I actually have not gotten sick at all since COVID. Like, I haven't had a cold, I haven't had flu, I haven't had anything. My boys, they have. They've had a little bit of, not really a flu, but like a sore throat or a cough or something. And so when that happens, they get sent back to the school. Then we have to make sure we'll do a home test, and we still take him to the doctor just in case, because of school protocol. We have to, we had to have a doctor's excuse and make sure that they can get him in. But now I think at the schools, I don't know if they still do this, but they were doing this at least a couple months ago. If they had a temperature, then they'd give them a COVID test there. Because now they're so readily available, right? So I mean, we take the boys to the doctor if they pass gas funny for any reason whatsoever. If they feel, we take them to the doctor. That's why we have insurance, just to make sure that they're okay. So
So while we were talking about like physical healthcare, I'd like to talk about a bit some of the mental challenges maybe you or you've seen your family, your children go through because of COVID. How's this affected them mentally?
mm, you know, like I said before, I tried to find a silver lining for stuff. We did a lot of things as a family together. You know, I remember the first trip that we did take, we took it together because I could feel that everyone needed to get out, you know, and we went to Dallas, which in retrospect maybe wasn't the smartest place to be because it was huge, but we stayed with family members that all had COVID tests, and they were all, we were all clean, and we kind of just hung out with them. I think we went out to dinner once, but Dallas had everything on, like, everything was just super clean and like in your own cubby. It was the craziest thing, you know. So that felt a little bit weird when we did that. But psychologically, like for me, the only thing that it affect, I missed my students. I missed hanging out with friends and the boys. I want to say because nowadays, this day and age, I mean, I want them to go outside more and hang out with friends, which they do. But a lot of the time they're online in video games, and so they're still in contact with their friends via headset, playing games and stuff. So it wasn't too bad. But I know that they did go through like cabin fever a little bit, you know, because they took away organized sports. My son went into baseball, and literally the first week of baseball, that's when COVID hit, and whoop, no baseball. So he didn't have anything for a year. So it was kind of like, you know, um, but it didn't affect my wife too much. She's pretty strong. I mean, we had each other. We had the family. We had together. My parents live in town, so anytime we could see them, we just made sure we weren't in contact with anybody, or we get COVID tests. We'd all find a way to get COVID tests somehow. We just to make sure we didn't give it to one another or give it to other people. So but we were pretty much okay. A lot of movies were watched during COVID. So
So I want to talk a bit about what you do as a profession. So you're Dr. Diaz, and you are the current professor of trombone at Texas A&M University-Kingsville, correct?
Mhm. That's right.
Can you tell me a bit about the studio and some of the achievements that you have there?
Well, I don't ever. I don't know. It's. I don't like to talk about myself. So I'm gonna really really talk about the students because they're the ones that do the work. I just make sure they do it. You know, and but they accomplish a lot of things. As a group and individuals, they've won numerous awards, international awards. They've There's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of things that I've been there 15 years, and they've always kind of one upped the studio every year. So when I first got here, we start out little, small, win this or not win, just become mentioned, and then being finalist for something. A student does this, or a group of students do this, and then they get noticed. And so every year, it's like every year, I tell my wife, tell my parents, everybody, and even the studio as well. I tell them, every year something good happens. Like there's always something that we have done together that has been really really good, you know. And so sometimes it's hard to top what we had done the previous year. So I have to be creative, but I can give you a list of some things. We have this big international trombone festival, and they have all these competitions, and it's literally where all these trombone players from all over the world compete, and it's a pretty big deal just to be mentioned or to be awarded or to be placed. So anytime that happens, that's a win because they're competing against people from all over the world, from different conservatories. They spend lots and lots of money to go to school, and they get taught very well, but they also get taught very well at this university too, for a very very fraction of the cost. And I'd like to take pride in that because I was a alumnus of this school, and me coming back was very cool, very one of those kind of dream fulfilling things. And the students are doing way more than what I did, when I was younger, and kind of wanted to make them understand that that's part of the process, and then they maybe hopefully take it to their students. But there's so many performances and winnings that they've done. Well, most recent, and then Garza winning that Seattle Symphony bass trombone job. He was a bass trombone student of mine. He graduated, I believe, in 2019. Went to UT Austin, and then he became adjunct here. And basically, when you win a symphony job, a major orchestra in the U.S., that's like being drafted in the NFL and starting. That's kind of the equivalent because it's so difficult. And so, and there's countless teachers, countless band directors that take their bands to the state marching contest. They have all, they do all these things. So it's not just performing, it's just teaching. It's spreading music, spreading the do I say, spreading the love for the instrument and for music and for teaching and being successful. See what a bunch of students can do when they work together. They're always going to be stronger together. So it's not just achievements, it's what they do outside of graduation, what they do. It's great that they win things, but then I want them to apply it to their next position, next job. That's what any teacher hopes. So hope that answers the question.
It did. And because of that, I can tell that the studio has a pretty nice reputation around the world, according to these different things they've won. So how did this pandemic affect the studio?
It it did. Like I said before, it was like I had to pause, think about how we can still move forward, but just not as quickly, right? Another thing that was that did affect students is it got students a little bit complacent, because when you're at home, it's very easy to stay at home. You just turn on the computer and there's a class, right? So I had to think of a way to kind of maybe not, be so complacent, because it's very easy to do that when you're at home all the time. You have your comforts at home, everything you need. And I think when COVID came back, or whenever people, I'm sorry, whenever everybody went back to school and life opened up, then it became okay. Here we go, but we're not starting. If we were going 100 miles an hour, we got to start at like 30. Like, okay, here we go. So, and I don't think it was too bad in the studio, to be honest, because I kind of talked to other professors and things from other universities, and they completely shut down. They couldn't do anything. And that was tough. We still were able to do things. We were very careful for the most part, having, HEPA filters in my office, the screen. When we did trombone choir, we were like trying to be 6 feet apart, away from each other. We Some ensembles use bell covers, but they were kind of more harm than good. What I mean by bell covers, they'd put the cover right on the instrument to kind of eliminate germs from spreading. There were things that were taken, and thank goodness, no one really, really, really got sick from COVID. I know some did get COVID, but it wasn't really bad. And it didn't spread like wildfire. The university did a good job of containing these things, so, the rules were set and people were not getting sick as much, so that was very smart on the university. Um, but yeah, we took a couple steps back, but they weren't bad. We didn't start over by any means. We didn't start over. We had our lessons. We had this. I still demanded these things. We need to get these done, because when the world opens back again, we got to come back to it, and we want to take it easy too, because, mental health was a big thing. Some people were cabin fever and they missed this and they missed that. And yeah, so I took in consideration. Everybody's different. Every student. That's the beauty of teaching a private lesson, is that you cater your teaching and you cater what you do to every student. Some student want to go 100 miles an hour. Like, okay, let's go. Some students, maybe they need a little bit. Okay, we're going to start at 40 miles an hour and then we'll pick it up. That's the beauty of teaching one-on-one.
So you were talking about a couple of like measures you were taking to limit the spread of COVID. Can you kind of go a bit more into detail about some of those things? You were talking about some separation. You were talking about shower curtains. Can you kind of specify what exactly was going on with those?
So what I did, and I'll start in my office, my personal space, which is where I teach one-on-one lessons. And of course, it's a small enclosed area. The good thing that the new music building had at the School of Music is that since it's brand new, the HVAC system and the air conditioner, it was just where the student was. It would basically suck the air out from where they were, right? And where I was, it was two separate units. Where I was sitting, the air was coming in from outside air. It wasn't like air that was being recirculated in the room or in the building. It was out and then coming back in. So that was a good thing about being in the music building. Everything was being filtered, being new. Second thing was our wonderful band director of bands. He actually bought little mini HEPA filters for every studio member, for every studio office. So we use those, right? And in the band rooms and anything, bought some good. We use those. And then I went another step, and I kind of, me and a friend of mine, we built these shower curtain rods for the room, and they're still in there. I just haven't been there because I've just been too lazy to move them, but I will someday. But they basically just close in the center, and the student can play their instrument freely there, and I'm in the other side, and hopefully it just catches any germs or anything. I mean, it's not 100%, but it's better than, I don't know, better than, I'm not gonna say better than nothing, because it was pretty effective how it is, and some people were kind of like, why don't you just teach Zoom from home? It's like, well, we did that, and I didn't like it, and I know the students didn't. I try to do the best that I can. It's also very expensive to have good mics, and the internet, and sometimes in Kingsville wasn't the best, and so FaceTime lessons were not very good. A microphone like this is very expensive, and students can't sometimes afford things like that, which is very understandable. So I'm not the only faculty member that did that. A lot of us did that. We did the same thing to our offices. So, kind of kudos to them to kind of feeling like, okay, we need to keep things going. And it's not that we were being selfish that we wanted to get out of the houses, because, students are paying money to go to school. And I know I felt that they need to get what they need, what they deserve, rather than a screen sometime. And if we can do it, then we will figure out some way to do it that is safe for myself and it's safe for the student. And typically, I think most students felt comfortable with that. So, and also they wore masks sometimes. Playing masks, forgot about the mask they would wear. Sometimes they used it, sometimes they didn't. To me, at that point, I think it's kind of a moot point using a mask if you're playing. So that was my thing. Going back to that mask question, I don't know if that necessarily helped, as much. It's almost the same, but anyway. But that's kind of that's what I did in the studio for us,
I kind of want to talk about a bit what you've seen with the rest of your school of music going on. What are some things you've noticed that how they taught, or some things that you've seen change with the whole school of music overall?
Ooh, there's a lot. I mean, we can talk about this for an hour. But it's good things. It's good things. It's very good thing. Because I mean, like I said, I went to school here. I graduated in 1999 from this school, like when I was an undergrad. So if you think about it, we say 2000 is 2022. That's like 23 years, right? So a lot has changed. A lot of the faculty have changed. I'm probably one of the oldest faculty members here, and I was the youngest one 15 years ago. It's crazy, and the faculty has changed over time, but the actual essence of the faculty has not changed. Like, their goals towards students have not changed. It's still the same. Work for the student. My wise mentor told me once, he always says, if you work towards your students' goals, your job will take care of itself. I'll never forget that. And that's my mentality. I don't, that's what I try to do. Try to help make everyone successful as possible, reach their potential, come out of their shell. And because we are, as a school, if they become a band director straight from undergrad, we are the last thing they do before they actually go into the real world. That's how I see it. And so I would like, and I know all the faculty together want to help prepare the student to be the best that they can be. Because it's not just about playing their instrument. There's a lot of components about being a good teacher. You have to be a good motivator. You have to be a good musician. You have to be a good historian. You have to know where the music came from. You have to have, some form of theory. You need to know how to tune chords. There's all these things that, yes, their private lesson teacher helps and teach them, but there's specialists in the music school that does that. And they've always been like that since I've been here. Like I said, faculty change, but the essence hasn't, right? We all have the same goals. And the biggest thing that I think has changed is, of course, the size of the school. We finally have a beautiful music building that that the students deserve and the faculty can utilize to teach the students to their highest ability with electronics and everything. Sound, I mean, just visually, audibly, it's awesome. I use it, and it helps our teaching. It helps the students reflect on things and watch things, what they're doing incorrectly, or listen to what you're doing wrong. um we have more faculty now, with more. I wish we had more faculty, because we still need more faculty for the amount of students we have. I mean, we have about 200 and maybe 75 music majors roughly. We did dip a little bit from COVID. Maybe it's a little bit less, but and I mean, we're about to go through a new leadership. Our longtime um, chairman slash director of music is retiring. He's been here for, whew, I know, way over, half his life. So that is going to be very different. But I know that the people in charge are going to keep the same goals and essence of the whole school of music to help each student. I know that was a long-winded answer, but there's a lot to it. There's a lot of good things that have happened. Um, and I'm really happy to be a part of it, to be part of that growth and I know it's going to get bigger. I mean, it's going to get bigger and it's going to get better. So,
So kind of spreading out from just our School of Music, as a musician yourself that's kind of interconnected and seen a lot of the music world, what changes have you seen in the world of music because of this pandemic?
oh, well, I'm actually going to hit the positive effect, because there's a lot of positive effects for me. Zoom wasn't very popular in the college, not in our college, not really for what we were doing. I know they some would use it for distance learning and things like that, but musicians, we really never use this stuff. We didn't really have to. And now, instead of spending all this money doing a master class, talking and listening to players, while it's not as quite as effective, we can do master classes in Europe. We can do them in another country. We can do them across the country. And I did quite a few of those in the past year and a half. I did a whole bunch of those, a lot of interviews, talk shows, kind of like what we're doing right now, the way they can archive this and show this to their students. I had students, I mean, being part of master classes from really famous trombone players from New York, from, I think, when she was in Milwaukee. We had all these players that came in and they did a master class, and I set up uh great mics, and I got some great equipment and sounded great back and forth. Got some great feedback for a fraction of the cost if I were to bring somebody down. Now, is that the best way to do it? No, but it is really effective, and I know the students got a lot out of all that kind of stuff. And I still wanted to keep doing that. I think it's great. That is some of the good things that have happened, for me. Um, and I'm thinking, like, at a teaching point, educational standpoint. I'm not talking about government or anything like that. I'm not going to get into that, because that is not my forte. But in a teaching standpoint, I think it helped. It made teachers get creative. It made teachers have to think outside the box on how to teach and what they're going to do, and that's just not in college. I mean, my wife teaches special ed. That's very hard to do online with a special ed child, right? And I remember I had to help her do some things, and how to set up electronics, how to set this up, and then she went with it. And I even got to witness a couple of her classes, just not really in front, but just listening, and got really innovative. And the parents got in. I know it was very difficult though for some band directors. I know it hit the band directors very, very hard in the area, public school band directors, because the kids just disappeared. Because I'm talking about a college standpoint. High school and middle school, that's a whole nother ball game. It hit them way harder, and band directors are still struggling to get kids back into band. Because if you think about it this way, some of the students had to learn how to play their instruments online via Zoom, and that is extremely difficult to do when it's a physical thing. It's kind of like teaching a kid how to throw a baseball or a football on Zoom. It's very difficult to do, you know, and that is maybe a negative. I mean, that is a negative part of what happened. A lot of people got lost in the shuffle. You know, Parents had to stay home with their kids. That's tough. Um, because not everybody's a teacher, so they didn't have to stay home. But then that's even hard too, because when you're teaching here, you have to make sure your kiddos are doing what they're supposed to do. So that was really tough. But I have two very good boys that understood the importance of doing what they needed to do. Yes, do we have to fight them? Oh yeah, they're kids, right? But they understood that concept. So I'm like I said, there was good and there was bad, right? I mean, but I would like to think, regardless of people. I mean, not regardless, but with the exception of people getting sick and people dying, you know, there were some good things that came out of this, and I think we were forced to do them. But hey, sometimes you got to get out of your comfort zone to do some great things, right? There's always that great quote about, um, in order to be successful, you have to do a lot of uncomfortable things, right? And so that that could have pushed people to do certain things. It improved people's software, like Zoom. The audio software is better than what it was when it first started. It was just for video conferencing. People didn't use it for music, for lessons, you know. So they upped their game. A lot of people upped their game with their video software for one, and other things. So a lot of things.
So, so the pandemic has been going on for over 2 years at this point now, and as you said earlier, a lot of students had to learn to play their instrument through Zoom, or students would receive an education through Zoom. How do you
Mhm.
feel this has affected them overall, and do you think it'll continue to affect them as they grow on? Do you feel maybe they'll kind of learn to grow out of it? How do you feel
Hmm.
that learning online has affected these students?
Well, I'll specify for music. Think about it. Sixth grade. Even when the pandemic hit, the sixth graders only got maybe a full year and a half of teaching, right? So they missed out on a lot of things. Then the following year, their seventh grade year, was completely online, right? That's a year and a half. And then the following year, I think people were starting to come back, right? Little by little. It wasn't like boom. So think about those sixth graders that only had this much time, and then they were completely online. Then they came back, and then they probably lost a lot of those kids because they weren't quite invested. Think about the sixth graders that started. What was the most fun thing about band? Yes, playing an instrument, but to me, it was being around my friends that were playing the same instrument as me, right? And then the sixth grade concert, the Christmas concert, and then oh, your parents coming and picking. I mean, there's those types of things that they missed out on. Think about the seniors that missed out on their graduation, right? 2 years of seniors, really, in some places, right? They missed out. Think about people's freshman year of college, where they miss that real freshman year of college of hanging out and doing things. So not only musically but psychologically, that part of students, that was, you can't get that back. You can't get back that time. You know, and so that was, I think, affected, and sometimes it affects them mentally, mature, like they're mature wise, and it affects their playing or their performance. And this is anything. This is just not just music, but this is a lot of teaching, right? So that got hit pretty hard, in my opinion. So uh I don't know if that answers completely your question, but it's going to take a little bit of time to recover in that aspect. You know, I know teachers are playing catch up from those years, and for teachers, that's hard to do. I mean, that is difficult, and, some teachers went at it 100% and some teachers retired early. I mean, that's a fact. Some teachers are like, all right, I'm out. And they can, but, my kids had good teachers, and I like to think my wife and I are good parents. So we were on their butts to make sure they did what they had to do. And I think parents had to do that too, and this is another thing. Parents finally understood the stuff teachers had to go through, you know, like, oh, whoa. I mean, I had to teach my kid math and I didn't know they changed math on me, you know? Well, it's different type of math, but I like, oh, I got to relearn this. This ain't working for me. But yeah, parents, I think, find like, oh, wow, these teachers, okay. That's why I'm saying taking things for granted. That was a big COVID lesson. Don't take things for granted, because they'll be taken away really quickly and out of the blue, right? So I don't know. I guess that's all I have to say about that. So
So that's actually been really helpful to hear so far. I want to ask a few more things though. So hindsight tends to be 2020. What are some things you would have changed with how things were done during the pandemic? It's hard to say that you would have done. It's hard to say you could have done these things differently because of the information we were given. But knowing what you do now, how would you have changed things, teaching wise or education wise?
I don't know if I would have changed anything. I mean, that's a hard question, because what I mean, I think there's still that what if factor. If we didn't take the proper precautions, more people might have gotten sick. I've had different arguments about my beliefs with certain people, you know, and I just don't want to talk about it with them because they are not going to agree with you. And I am very open to facts and following science and that kind of thing. And so, yeah, I mean, I mean, right now, yeah, nothing happened. But think about it. I mean, if we didn't do what we did, it could have been worse. I mean, I don't know. Some people are very, no, I'm gonna. I mean, I knew one person that she goes, oh, I purposely got my whole family sick so that we can, help with the either herd immunization or I don't know, what was it called? Yeah, herd, not herd immunization, herd. Is that what it's called? I don't know. It was just these interesting theories that people had. And I'm like, oh, okay. You know, it's there was a article I read on how this person was, very, worried about COVID and was laughing about how people that barely passed science and, barely made it out of high school for whatever reason are making all these decisions, or not making decisions, but are saying, oh, I don't believe this. I don't believe anything. I'm following the science. And so the article was like, well, do you even believe the science? Do you even know what the science is? You didn't even pass chemistry, or you didn't even pass this in high school, or you barely passed this. So it's like, there was, that article was extremely biased, but it made me think a little bit, about some things, but I don't think I would have changed anything in a nutshell, because you don't know what could have happened. The university said, but let's go back to let's all do this. And then boom, you know, if everybody did that, then we might still be dealing with something. I don't know. So I don't think I would have changed anything. I think however it is, and it's getting better. Things are looking back to normal now, the way I see it. It's gonna take a little time to get at 100% because we're not at 100% right now. But
You talked about a bit earlier about some of the bright sides of kind of coming out of COVID with what was how things were taught now.
Mhm.
Because of how teaching was affected, what are some ideas you feel will stay while in the field of education for music?
Uh, like kind of like being with COVID, or like how we taught with like during COVID. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, so kind of you talked a bit about the technology, so maybe some things like that, or maybe mentalities people learn because of COVID, like you said, taken for granted. Uh, some of these things that you feel will stay after COVID and in a positive way.
I think that, taking things for granted would be nice. I mean, or not taking things for granted is what I mean. I think that would be cool, right? Um, you know, I always talk about trying to be nice and being kind and things like that, and I am 100%, with that, and that's the thing, when COVID hit, you wanted like this was the first time that I ever seen that everyone needed to be together, not just like Texans or demographics here or certain classes. It was the world needed to come together. You know, that was the first thing. That's the first time in my lifetime I've ever seen that. You know, many people's lifetimes. So like this is going to be in the history books that people read about later on, our next generation. Reading about this, right? And I don't the teaching part of it, what I learned, like, you learn these concepts, my family, not taking for granted time because they're going to be gone soon. My boys will be gone, and the students will be gone soon. They graduate, most of them graduate in 5 years, they'll be gone. So I want to enjoy that time with them, enjoy these things that we do in teaching. Now I do, with the electronics, Zoom is, I still love using Zoom. It's a great tool for reaching people far away for free. It's just in its great quality. Not that I'm trying to be a spokesperson for Zoom. There's there's Skype and there's all these other things that can be used, right? But yeah, I mean, it's I know a lot of people use that still. Some people don't want anything to do with Zoom anymore. Some people don't at all. But yeah, I mean, I've always utilized electronics in my teachings anyway. So it wasn't that far fetched. What I did do a lot of was learning how to make videos, and I use that to help students, you know. I do that and I learn how to use some other things that will enhance the students' learning and make them, like I said, make them observe what they're doing or listen or critique themselves. So I think a lot of faculty doing the same thing, and other things. They're using online things. They're using Google Classroom more, I know, in the public school system. So I mean, there's a lot of good things that can happen, especially with younger teachers. You know, younger teachers are really, they're into electronics, and I am too. I mean, I love electronics. I think they can be utilized in a great way. Sometimes they mess up, and that sucks. You got to know how to fix that. It happens, you know, but yeah, I mean, that's what I did. I was always using electronics, but you know, uh, we still, I think a lot of us still use that some type of technology, whether it's recording or videos or anything. But to me, the main thing was reaching out to people far away, and you can just schedule, because I'm scheduled to do a big Zoom class next month. I did a festival in Puerto Rico, but I was at home. I did this festival where I did a master class. I did a master class in Juilliard in New York from here. I did a master class in California from here. I did a lot of different things. So it was cool for me to be able to do that, because all those trips are expensive. It'd be great to travel, but if I can reach out and help out anybody doing it this way, shoot, that's great. So
Okay, I have one last question before the end, and I kind of want to go back to what you said about how you feel we're kind of coming out of the pandemic now. And because of that, what are some future plans you have for yourself or for the studio now that we're likely seeing the end of this pandemic?
Let's see. So you're talking about like just in general for students, like what, like myself or students or anything?
Maybe some personal things you'd like to do, some professional things you'd like to do coming out of the pandemic, or some things you'd like to for your studio to do that they
Well, we
couldn't have done because of the pandemic.
well we couldn't travel, but we did before. But we actually did take a trip to Chicago in December, and that was a fun trip. I enjoyed that trip. I know the students did as well. It was a big honor to have a concert at this Midwest Band and Orchestra International Clinic Festival. A lot of groups get invited to play, but it's very selected, selective. And so that's what we missed. We literally missed out about a year, I guess maybe a year and a half of that, roughly. We couldn't go tours. We couldn't go to schools to tour. Um, we could still compete. There were a lot of online competitions. Now that is another thing that was pretty good. People started doing a lot of online competitions. You can do all these competitions online from all over the world, just recording videos and send it in. So that was good. They were utilizing things like that, you know. Um, there was another thing that was really good about students that I'm just going to add before. So students actually learn how to record themselves well to be able to submit to things, which was really cool, and make videos and stuff. So that's another thing from like a previous question that kind of just hit me when it happened. But going back to this, well, I mean, this year we're going to go to the International Women's Brass Conference in Denton. I wanted to do, rather than just performing, I actually wanted the students to compete in a live competition, which we couldn't do in COVID. But the Women's Brass Conference has been around for a while, so they've been doing it for a while. But it's actually in Texas, so I thought, well, let's drive over and make a trip out of it, learn some things, and um, but those are the things that was missed, was the traveling part. Um, that we usually do together to either recruit for the university or just share the love for trombone, because we go to middle schools as well and play for middle schools to show the little ones, because the middle schools don't get a lot of love from colleges. Sometimes they just get from high school, which is great, but you know a lot of colleges, a lot of I know my students, some of them, they're getting close to this professional level, and I want the students to hear that, the younger ones to hear that, kind of, so the next generation of musicians can evolve from there. That's a big thing I want to do. I want to go back to traveling and taking things. Another thing that we didn't get to do was our trombone day, that we always have so many people come to right before COVID hit. We had between 500 and 600 people at the school, roughly, and next week COVID hit, and boom, so I didn't have one last year, and I didn't have one this year because I wasn't exactly sure what was going to happen. But that brought a lot of young students to love music and to enjoy the day of trombone. And there's a clip going around of about 500, close to 500 students playing Amazing Grace, and it's probably one of the coolest things I've ever seen. And we'll do it again next year, right? But that brings all these people down that maybe don't ever get to do that. We bring these world-class guest artists, and the students just really have to pay like $10 or $15, which is not a lot of money. And I mean, we could do it for free, but we also need to make money so we can bring in another guest artist. So that's one of the big reasons, so. But those are just some of the things that I want to bring back. I want the students to travel. I want us to travel again. We already kind of started doing that, so that's always a positive thing. So
Okay, so before we finish up this interview, I want to ask, is there anything else you would like to share with me about your experiences with COVID-19 that I have not asked about? Maybe anything you've gone through personally, or any kind of wisdom you've learned through this that you want to tell anybody that may watch this interview later on?
well, what I you know kind of the things that I had already talked about, I kind of just spewed it all out. But you never know, this could happen again. something like this could happen again. And, we weren't quite ready for this as a population. Um, I don't know quite about the government. They say that I know they have plans and contingency plans for things, but, this could happen again in some form or fashion, and when it happens, the people need to be compassionate. People need to be kind to one another. They need to not judge one another for not doing certain things. You didn't wear a mask. How dare you? Just things like that. Or why are you wearing a mask? What's wrong with you? That kind of thing. And that's not going to get us anywhere in life as a species, you know, it's stupid to do that. That's just stop being so judgmental. Everybody has a reason for them doing it. And I worry about myself, my family, and the people that are close to me. My students, I wanted them to be safe. I wanted to be safe. Everybody needed to be safe. We didn't know. But I mean, my thing is like I said, don't take anything for granted because it could be taken away very, very quickly. And you don't know when you're going to get it back. Right. So that's why I love my job. I love my family. I love my students. I love what we do. I love what I do. And who knows, we may not be able to do it for a long time, or we may do it for a very long time. I don't know. But I just want to take it day by day, but I also want to do things like sometimes there is no tomorrow. That sounds dramatic. Maybe it's not that aspect, but I want to give all I can. That's why my days are so long during the day. Before this interview, I literally got home maybe 30 minutes before I zoomed on to this interview, you know, because I want to spend as much time as I can with my family, with my students as I can, with my boys. And so don't take anything for granted. That's the biggest thing I can take away. And just be kind and be nice to each other. And typically, hopefully, that helps. I mean, I think if the whole world did that, that would save a lot of problems. Some people probably will argue with me and disagree with me, but I don't really care. That's how I try to go by the golden rule: treat somebody as you want to be treated yourself. So that's pretty much it.
The golden rule is definitely something to live by. I want to thank you so much for the time you spent talking with me and all the preparation time. It's been really great getting to hear your side of the story and how this has affected you and how it's affected the way you've taught, and also kind of hearing the side of a musician. It's been really great hearing this, and I'm excited for others to be able to hear this as well. So thank you, Dr. Oscar Diaz.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it. Thanks for letting me chat.
Thank you.